And welcome everyone to our top 16 reveal here on the Bleacher Report app. I'm Andy Katz. So the men's basketball selection committee was meeting in Indianapolis this past week, and they went over a top 16 seeds line 1 through 4 of the men's basketball 2024 NCAA tournament bracket as if the tournament had ended today. So this is real. Of course, the season isn't over, but this is a real snapshot in time. Kind of better than what else the rest of us are doing in terms of putting our brackets, because these are the real people that are going to put together the bracket. So let's look at what they did here. All right, so we've got the 1 seeds, Purdue, UConn, Houston, Arizona. The 2 seeds, North Carolina, Tennessee, Marquette, Kansas. The 3 seeds, Alabama, Baylor, Iowa State, Duke, Auburn, San Diego State, Illinois, and Wisconsin. So when they broke it down in terms of how it would work, remember we've done this in our brackets, it's Midwest versus West, East versus South. So on the Midwest side, basically you've got Purdue, Tennessee, Baylor, San Diego State. That's your 1, 6, 10, 14. The West is your Arizona, Kansas, Duke, Auburn, and in the seed rankings, that's an Arizona 4, Kansas 8, Duke 12, Auburn 13. The East is a UConn 2 on the seed line. Carolina is the 2 seed there as a 5. Iowa State is the 3 seed as the 11 on the seed line. Wisconsin, the 4 seed on the 16. In the South, Houston, Marquette, Alabama, Illinois, 3, 7, 9, 15 in terms of where they fall on the seed line. So what you had there was you'd have potentially a Purdue, San Diego State, Tennessee, Baylor. That would be your Sweet 16 if it all held out. In the West, you'd have an Arizona, Auburn, Kansas, Duke in the Sweet 16. In the East, you'd have a UConn, Wisconsin. What did I say? I didn't mean Carolina. I said Arizona, Auburn, Kansas, Duke. Here you'd have UConn, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Iowa State. Then in the South, Houston, Illinois, Marquette, Alabama. So a couple key points. I want to take some of your questions, but this is what I've learned in talking to the selection committee. First off, while it isn't unprecedented for the committee to be unanimous on which 4 teams deserve to be number 1 seeds, it was and has been highly unusual for the selection committee to be in full agreement with the number 1 overall seed, and they were with Purdue. And the reason is the Boilermakers 7-0 in the top half of quad 1. That's what gave them the edge over UConn. UConn was the number 2 overall seed because they had 13 wins in quadrants 1 and 2. 2 losses at Kansas. They were out without Stephon Castle in that game, and Donovan Clingan was injured in their loss at Seton Hall. Houston was the overall number 3 seed. The Cougars just cleared the board in terms of positive metrics. 3 losses against a challenging schedule. The 4th number 1, Arizona. Arizona was in the top 5 in essentially every metric. A couple blemishes on the resume, but there wasn't another number 1 to jump up over them. There was also a strong consensus on the 4 number 2 seeds. They had Carolina edging Tennessee on that 2 line. And look, Tennessee had some edging, had some better metrics. They both played during the week of looking at this. Carolina lost at Syracuse. Tennessee won at Arkansas, but they looked at the full body of work. And they go back to Tennessee, losing to Carolina, which gave Carolina the edge. Marquette, the 3rd of the number 2 seeds, beat out Kansas. In some sense, it was because they were so close, but Marquette beat Kansas. I was at that game out in Honolulu. Kansas got the last spot on the 2 line, in large part because, they got wins over 2 of the number 1s, Houston and UConn, as well as the number 2 seed, Tennessee. Alabama and Baylor, first 2 teams are on the 3 line. This generated a lot of discussion, I was told. Very similar resumes, but as they looked at that, the Alabama metrics slightly better so far on the road. Iowa State came in next. The Cyclones right behind Baylor. They lost a close game in Waco, if you remember, kind of controversial. Lost that one. But Iowa State has 8 wins in the first 2 quadrants, including wins against Houston and Kansas at home, and 3 road victories in the top half of quadrant 1, which was enough for them to be just slightly ahead of Duke. Duke and Auburn were in the discussion for the final spot on the 3 line. It went to Duke slightly because of their number of wins and winning percentage in quadrant 1. Auburn landed at the top of the 4th line, and you just look at their efficiency numbers both offensively and defensively. Now here's the sort of the surprise. San Diego State on that 4 line, but ahead of Illinois and Wisconsin. I thought that was the surprise of the top 16. The Aztecs, and they had a great win Friday night, which I watched against New Mexico at home. Great home team. Did challenge themselves in the non-conference, lost some non-conference games, but their defensive efficiency numbers are what sort of pushed them up. And they got that 5th Q1 win Friday night, as I said, over New Mexico. Illinois, 15th on the seed list. The Illini just don't have bad losses, certainly not when they were at full strength. They've got the resume, and they've got a predictive metric that is worthy of a 4 seed. The 4th line, Wisconsin. A lot of discussion, the 4th of the 4th line, Wisconsin. A lot of discussion with the Badgers, but they've got 11 wins. When they're looking, they've got 11 wins, in those quadrants. That includes a 6-5 mark in quadrant 1. So it's 11 in the top quadrants. The only other team that can match the 6-5 mark in quadrant 1 are the ones that are above them. And that's what gave Wisconsin the edge over Creighton and Dayton. They were sort of next up in terms of the teams that were receiving some consideration. All right, so let's go to some questions here, which I appreciate you throwing at me here. So, STFU, you've been a very common questionnaire, if you will, and I appreciate that engagement. You said Auburn could beat all these teams. We'll see. They got a big game against Kentucky. I agree, Sconroy 56, that the Marquette-UConn game today is on fire. We'll see what happens. Obviously, they play twice, and I'm glad they do here in the Big East. But first one is at UConn, and it should be a great game at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Let's see here. San Diego State, top 10 strength of schedule. Yes, played a great schedule, lost at Grand Canyon, lost at BYU, but they played the games. So I think what this says, when you look at the bottom 4 on this list, so the 4 line, they all have some warts, but the problem was there weren't teams on the 5 line where you could say, okay, these teams have to jump up to the 4th line. We didn't see that. So here's what I will tell you, that consistently what has happened since they've done this top 16 reveal is the teams on the 1 and 2 line, it's like 90% they have stayed in the top 16. Maybe even higher. I don't have it in front of me, but we can get it for you guys. That if you're in that top 8 on February 17th, mid-February, good chance you're going to be in the top 16 for sure a month later. Where there could be some movement, obviously, is the back part of the 3rd line and, of course, the 4th line. I will tell you that looking at this, unequivocally, I think Purdue and UConn, they're going to stay right where they are in some order. 1, 2. Houston, pretty confident they're going to be there. When you look at the 4th number 1, Arizona ahead of Carolina, Tennessee, and Marquette. I would say that of those teams, probably Marquette and Tennessee have the best chance of jumping up, but they got a lot of work to do. Marquette would have to beat UConn, probably twice. They play them twice. I think they'll probably play them a third time in New York at Madison Square Garden. So we'll see if that happens. Carolina probably has to get the sweep of Duke and maybe win the ACC tournament, that is. Arizona, I think, clearly has to win the Pac-12, so they got to keep doing that. That means they got to beat out Washington State, see if UCLA can keep winning. And Tennessee in the SEC, beat Alabama, beat Auburn, beat South Carolina, which they've done, but I'm saying, like, in terms of winning these games, you've got to win the SEC regular season to get up there for sure. Because otherwise, there's no way that they can get up there. And I just want to, before we get, I want to make sure of what they've got left, because I do think they're an interesting case study here of what there's left on their schedule. Excuse me, they lost to South Carolina. I knew it as I said it, that they lost 63-59. So, I mean, coming up next, they've got to beat Auburn at home. They got to win at Alabama. They got to go to South Carolina and with Kentucky. So they got a lot of hard games coming up still that Tennessee has to win. I think that point about Kansas I raised, I think is critical, which is the fact that Kansas has wins over UConn and Houston. So they've got wins over number one seeds. That's one of the main reasons they are holding on to that 2 line. I don't think Alabama, Baylor, Iowa State can't get to the 1. Can they get to the 2? Yes. On the 4 line, it's going to be interesting to see, can Duke hold its position? I think Auburn will. Can San Diego State hold its position? Got to win on the road in the Mountain West at some point. And then Illinois and Wisconsin. I would say Illinois has a better chance of holding that position or maybe getting up to a 3 than the Badgers do. So a lot there. Last 2 things before we get out of here. I do agree Illinois can make the jump up to 3. I do think Michigan State, if they get on a great run, they can't get to 4, I don't think. Could they get to the 5 line? Maybe. I think probably their height is 6, but we'll see. They got to keep winning. They play Michigan tonight. That's a game they should win. Can they sweep in the top? Can they sneak in the top 25? Yes, they definitely can. If Iowa State wins the Big 12, how high can they get? They can get up to that 2 line. Yes. I don't think they can get to the 1 line. They just don't have the non-conference resume to do so. So, glad we had a chance to dissect this. I'm going to be speaking with Charles McClellan. He is the NCAA Tournament Men's Basketball Selection Committee Chair. You can see that interview. We will post that as well on our social media platforms. We'll be back Monday with a AP Top 25 reaction, and then we'll be on Tuesday with our bracket reacting off of this. So all of that will occur over the next couple of days here on the Bleacher Report app. Check me out at the Andy Katz on Twitter X and the Real Andy Katz on Instagram. Thank you, everyone, for watching. Have fun with great games, especially UConn Marquette at 3 o'clock Eastern.